Hello, my name is Sally and welcome back to my channel. In the video today, we are going to take an in-depth look at the Duolingo English Test. We are going to look at each of the 4 subscores. We're going to talk about what each subscore is looking for. And we are going to go through the question types and talk about which question types belong to which subscore. Additionally, I'm going to go through each of the question types and explain the instructions to you and also give you some tips for each question type. This is a long video, so I will put a menu that tells you exactly what time each question type will be seen, so that if there is a particular question type that you're struggling with, you can go straight to that section. I took information found in the Duolingo English Test study guide found on their website and put together this chart to help you see the correlation between the 4 subscores, what each of those 4 subscores are testing, and the question types for each of the subscores. So let's take a look at this chart. The first subscore is literacy. When you think of a literate person, that person has the ability to read and understand what they're reading and write clearly. And so the questions that you see in this category test that particular type of skill. We have the C test, which is the broken words. We have describe an image in written form. We have the read and select the real vocabulary words. And we have read a question and then write your response. The second category listed is production. This is your ability to produce language, your ability to write and to speak, where you are producing your own original ideas and thoughts. The questions that fall into this category are to describe an image aloud, to describe an image in written form. Both of these require you to communicate what it is that you're seeing. To read aloud shows that you can read in a clear and comprehensible way. To listen and repeat is a question that you won't find in the study guide yet. Duolingo told me that they're still testing this question type, but that some students will get this question and some will not. And this is basically that you hear a statement and you repeat aloud what you hear. To read and then write shows that you can understand what you read and write a response. Read and then speak is very similar, only now we're using your spoken skill to describe what you have seen in the passage. Listen and then speak tests whether or not you understood the prompt spoken to you and then are able to respond in speaking with your own response. The third subscore we're going to go over is conversation. And you can think about when you talk to someone, what skills are used. Your ability to speak so that the other person understands you, and your ability to listen and understand what is being said to you. To test this, we have the questions describe an image aloud. This is showing that you can look at something and describe back what you see. Listen and select the real English word. This tests your audible vocabulary. Can you read aloud clearly? Listen and type the statement that you hear is whether or not you accurately understand what someone is saying to you. Read and then speak tests your ability to read a prompt and respond to it. Listen and speak is also testing your ability to understand and respond, but this time, do you understand a spoken question and can you respond to it? The last category is comprehension. This is overall what you understand, whether it's reading or listening. Again, we have the C test, we have the listen and select the real English words, we have read and select the real English words, and then listen and type the statement that you hear. Okay, let's take a look at the C test. As a reminder, the C test is checking your literacy and comprehension. For this question, you are given a passage and letters in the words are missing, and your goal is to complete the missing letters to create a complete passage. You have 3 minutes to complete this activity. regardless of the difficulty of the passage. So, for tips, you should read the entire passage once before going back to individual words. As you read, you can type in what you think the words are. Then go back and try again. Be careful that the letters are going into the correct box. Use the practice test to get used to doing this because it is quite tricky and it is a learning curve. I know somebody is going to ask me for the answer to this question, so take a look at it and see what you think it is. The next slide will be my answer. Minneapolis is a city in Minnesota. It is next to St. Paul, Minnesota. St. Paul and Minneapolis are called the Twin Cities because they are right next to each other. Minneapolis is the biggest city in Minnesota with about 370,000 people. People who live here enjoy the lakes, parks, and rivers. The Mississippi River runs through the city. For the question type to describe an image aloud, you are being tested on your production and conversation. And now the rules are that you must speak for a minimum of 30 seconds, but you're allowed to speak up to 1 minute and 30 seconds. The good news is you have 20 seconds to look at the image before you begin to speak. So this gives you your time to think. What are you going to say? Their tip tells you to tell a story about the photo. Don't just label the items that you see, but think of the reason why. So in this photo, you see a sign that says road closed. Why do you think the road is closed? What is the building that's there? Is it an apartment complex? Is it a hotel? This is your chance to be a little bit creative in your answer. And that's a good thing. It makes it much more interesting to not only take this test, but to have a chance for a better grade. Now remember, you cannot re-record your answer. So if you do have a mistake while you're speaking or you fumble over your words, it's okay. Just keep going. I took this image from Duolingo Study Guide, so I know it's not very clear. I did try to find a better version of this image on the internet, but I couldn't find it. And I know someone is going to ask me to describe this photo, so I'm going to describe it anyway, despite the image being less than perfect. Okay. This is a photograph of a street scene in a city. This image is cropped closely so that the focus is on a road construction sign just under a traffic light. I also see a building in the background that I think is probably either a hotel or an apartment building, so I think this must be a busy area. The close cropping of this photo makes it seem deceptively serene. The sky is blue and the image looks clear, but I'm sure that with a road closure, there must be a traffic jam just out of the camera sight as people try to navigate an alternate route to avoid this roadblock. I used a lot of sentences to describe this photo. This is just my answer, how I would answer it. And I've also had time to look at this photo in making this video. So your answer does not have to be the same as mine. Mine is just an example. The written form of describe an image tests your literacy and production. And the rule for this one is that you have 1 minute to complete this question. You will see the question and the image at the same time that the timer starts, so there's no prep time for this one. But you are only required to write 1 complete sentence. But it's a good idea to try to write more. Just make sure you leave time to go back and check your answer. Remember, a complete sentence includes a capital letter and a punctuation mark at the end. So that might mean a period or full stop, or it could be a question mark or an exclamation point. And the tip for this one is very similar to the Speak Aloud. They want you to do more than just label what you see. So instead of saying there are 4 people, describe what the relationship between the 4 people is. Instead of saying they're facing the oceans, talk about their day at the beach. Use your creativity and come up with something a little bit more than the basic statement to say about this photo. Again, I apologize for the quality of this photo. I took it from the test site, but I really can't tell what the older boy is holding. So in my description, I'm just going to ignore that because, I'm sure you'll get a clearer photo of this when you take your practice test. As it is, I can't tell what that is. So I'm going to just talk around that point. This is a photograph of a mother and her children walking towards the ocean. The family has just arrived, and they're excited to feel the cool salt water. The mother is wearing a sundress or a covering over her swimsuit, but her children are dressed ready to jump into the water. The Read and Select the Real English Word question type is testing you for literacy and comprehension. You have 1 minute to complete this question, and that means once you see the slide, the timer starts and you have 1 minute to read and click the ones that you think are actual English words. Now, this one can be tricky because you have to pay attention to the small details in the word. So, for example, in this list of words, on the second row, the last word is P-I-R-E-C-T. The small detail that they're tricking you with here is the P. It's not an English word because of the P. It would be an English word if you turned that letter upside down and turned it into a D. But B's and P's and D's, these are all very confusing because they look very similar. And if you're from a language that doesn't have the same characters as English, it can be even more tricky. So make sure you're noticing these little details like that. Once you have chosen a word, you must click the word and it'll turn orange. At least on my screen, it's orange. And you can click it again if you want to deselect it. But remember, you have 1 minute to go through these. I recommend you read through quickly for the ones that you recognize immediately, and then take any leftover time to think about the other words and to check the ones you've chosen. All right, I've typed out the words as best I could read them, so take a look at them and decide if you think they are real or not. Pause the video if you need to, because my answer is now. The real words in this list are keyboard, lost, road, bookshelf, funny, bicycle, readily, quiz, golf, mark. The Listen and Select the Real English Words section tests your comprehension and conversation. For this question type, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to complete the question. Now, you can play each word as many times as you want, but remember, you have to finish before the 1 minute and 30 second timer ends. I really think this question type is very difficult. It's my least favorite question type on the entire Duolingo English test. To me, what makes it difficult is I feel like different regions of English have different accents, and it's very difficult to get used to and to recognize if the person has an accent or if they're saying it incorrectly. So my advice is to do like Duolingo says and pay attention to the syllables. Think about the word. The ones you've chosen, go back and listen to again. Make sure you think you're right, and then move on to the next question. I don't think anybody is trying to trick you. So if you think the word is a real word, it is a real word. Do not think that they're saying something slightly differently just because they want to trick you. That's not the case. This read aloud question, asking you to record yourself saying the statement below, is testing your comprehension and conversation skills. Notice you have 20 seconds to complete this question type. So the advice is to read it aloud once for practice before you press the record button. That way, you've gone through it once and you know what it says. Remember to speak loudly and enunciate your syllables. Now, don't worry if you forget to click next. It will automatically move you to the next screen when the timer is up. This sentence says, I want to be certain that they have understood me. One thing you may have noticed, I said want to be instead of want to be. The reason is because in American English, we do what's called a consonant blend. when we have two consonants next to each other, we usually combine them into one. I don't know if this is true for British English or not, but that is how we would do it in America. For this listen and type question, you are being tested on comprehension and conversation. You have 1 minute to complete this question. You do not get a preview period, so you must listen and type the statement that you hear. You'll hear it play once, and then you can click the replay button up to 2 times, so you'll hear it a total of 3 times. My tip is type what you think you hear the first time, and then go back and play it again as you type in anything that you missed, and then use your third time to check yourself. Again, remember to use punctuation and a capital letter. This read and then write type of question is testing your production and literacy. So you're asked to respond to the question in at least 50 words. You have 5 minutes to complete this question. So you must read the question and think of your answer and type your answer all within that 5 minutes. The tip is to allow yourself time to check your answer. You want to look for your grammar, spelling, capitalization, and punctuation mistakes. They also advise you that varying your sentence structure is a good idea. Word choice is a good idea. All of these things will help you to improve your score. My advice to you is to really pace yourself, pay attention to the timer, and give yourself that time to check your answers at the end. In case you can't see this question, it says, describe a time that you were surprised. What happened? Not many things surprise me. I can remember one situation that really did shock me. I was traveling and I had a layover at an airport in London. I started to talk with 2 young women who were sitting next to me. I learned they were on their way to the U.S. to start university. I asked them about their school, and I was surprised to find out that they were on their way to the university that I work for. I asked them how they had found the school, and they told me that a friend had recommended it. I later discovered that their friend had been a former student of mine. I'm not easily surprised, but this coincidence was very strange to me. This read and then speak question is testing for conversation and production. The instructions tell you to prepare to speak for at least 30 seconds about the question below. Now the rule is you have a minimum of 30 seconds and a maximum of 1 minute and 30 seconds. The good news about this is that you get to see the directions for 20 seconds before the timer actually starts. So that gives you a little bit of time to think. Now, a minute and 30 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but you can say a lot in that short amount of time. Now, the tips for this question by the Duolingo study guide says that if you cannot think of anything to say, that you can explain what makes this question difficult. I get asked this a lot. What do I do if I can't think of anything to say? Well, here's your answer. If you can't think of anything, talk about why the question is difficult. Their advice is to speak naturally and try to use a variety of words and structures. My advice is don't panic. You can say a lot in a short time, so if you need to, think about your question before you start speaking. And if you really have nothing to say, do what they say and explain why you're having trouble. This question asks, describe your favorite subject in school. What is it? Why do you like it? How long have you studied it? And why is it important to you? All right. Brainstorming quickly. What do I like? Well, I like hiking and I like nature, so I'm going to make up something related to that. I really enjoy studying ecology, and it's my favorite subject in school. Ecology is the study of the relationship between living things and their habitats. I really like the subject because I crave spending time in nature, and I like learning about all the flora and the fauna in the areas I'm in. I fell in love with this subject when I started college about a year ago. when my environmental science class took us on a field trip to study a nearby river. I'd never realized how much there was to see in a river. I love the forests and the rivers, and I want to know how to take care of our natural environment. And I also want to be able to teach others to do the same. So, this is why I really enjoy the field of ecology, and I plan to make this my major in school. This listen and speak question is testing your conversation and production. Again, you have 30 seconds as a minimum amount of time to speak and a maximum amount of time of 1 minute and 30 seconds. So for this question type, you also get to see the directions for 20 seconds before the recording begins. And during this time, you can hear and replay the prompt. Now, this one is difficult because you have to understand what is being said to you. So if you cannot think of anything to say, if you cannot understand the question, they advise you to talk about what makes the question difficult. I want to say that I've gotten a lot of people tell me that their test was thrown out because they didn't answer the question, what the question was asking, because they didn't understand a word. This is difficult because if you think you're understanding the question and you're answering it, I think it's a bit unfair to throw out the entire test because of a word. But if you know you're not following the prompt, this might be a good chance to talk about why. Talk about what you understood in the question and why you're answering it the way you are, why you're having trouble with it. This is their advice. I took this from the study guide. Again, they advise you to speak naturally and use a variety of words and structures. All right, these last two questions are questions that are not included in the subscores. These questions are just a chance for your university to see a little bit more about you. So you have a writing version and a speaking version. For the speaking sample, you must speak for a minimum of 1 minute, and you have a maximum of 3 minutes. You will have 30 seconds to choose a prompt. Now that's very important. You're going to be given a choice, and you choose the one that you like the best. You'll see the directions for 20 seconds before the recording begins, and that gives you a chance to think about what you want to say. One thing that's important to remember about this question is the response is sent to your school as a video. So you want to make sure you're looking at the camera, make sure that you are making eye contact as much as you can, and just focus on this prompt as if you're just talking to a friend and let them get to know you a little bit. All right, this question asks us to choose a plant or animal that you have learned about and that you think is interesting. Describe some of the challenges or dangers the organism faces and explain how it has adapted for survival. Okay, for my answer, I'm going to talk about the possum. An animal that I find fascinating is the opossum, or in the South we just call them possums. One of the biggest challenges for this animal is human beings. A lot of people think that possums are a nuisance animal and that they destroy property or kill small farm animals like chickens, or some people even think that they carry diseases and that they bite. The truth about possums is that they are very quiet and not very aggressive. They're a helpful animal because they eat insects and mice. So I think I would actually like to encourage possums to spend time in my yard. When a possum is threatened, it will hiss and growl and generally look frightening. The interesting line of defense for the possum is that if its show of bravery doesn't work, it will lay still and play dead. They fall to the side, leaving their tongues hanging out, and they emit a substance that smells really bad. And so they'll stay like this for up to 6 hours to make sure that the threat is gone. I really think that the possum is a very interesting animal. For your writing sample, you have a minimum of 3 minutes to write and a maximum of 5 minutes. But you also get 30 seconds to choose between 2 prompts. So choose your favorite one, and remember that your response does get sent to the school. The person reading your response will see the question that you were asked, but it's a good idea to write it in a way that they don't have to see the question to know what you're answering. Try to vary your sentence structure, use good words, use transitions between your thoughts, and remember to go back and check your work. You want to make sure that your grammar is correct. You want to make sure you capitalized the first letter of every sentence and that every sentence has a punctuation mark at the end. This isn't graded, but it is a chance to show the university your writing ability, so you want to make a good impression. All right, here is my answer to the writing sample question. This question asks, do you think parents should be held responsible if their child causes trouble at school or in public? Why or why not? My answer is, it is not possible to always control the actions of another human being. All of us, even children, can act upon our own free will. For this reason, I do not think that parents should always be held accountable if their child causes trouble at school or in public. I think a parent should be able to show that they do try to instill rules in their children, but we must understand that parents cannot always be present to enforce those rules. In an ideal world, parents would teach their child discipline, and that child would always act in the way that he or she was taught. The reality is that a parent could potentially do everything correctly, but have a child who continues to act out. This could be the result of a strong will or a mental illness. I've read about situations in which parents tried to get help for children that they knew were a threat to society, but because of a lack of resources were unable to find that desired help. Ultimately, I think each situation is different, and it's better to focus on individual situations when considering parental responsibility. There is one more question type that is not found in the study guide. I contacted Duolingo about this question yesterday. They told me that this question is still being tested and that some students will get it, some students won't. She told me that the question is to listen and repeat what you hear. Now, she told me this question type would be under the category of production. To me, that seems a little strange because production is your ability to write and to speak, but conversation is your ability to speak and to listen. So to me, it seems like it's going to fit more with conversation, but we'll see what happens when they actually publish this into the study guide. In the meantime, the way to practice this would be to practice with the questions that ask you to listen and write what you hear, but just record yourself speaking. Play the entire thing back and listen to the original speaker and listen to yourself to compare the two. I'll make a video on this question soon, but I wanted to go ahead and give you the heads up that this is a question that you could potentially find on your Duolingo test. All right, I do hope that you found this video helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you find my content helpful, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.